patients on average do you have here coming in?
The whole hospital is 514 beds.
Maker Isaac is the director of the main hospital for South Sudan's 12 million people.
Broken bone?
Yeah, it's a broken bone.
Oh, that's a bad break. He's very skinny.
Yeah.
Is that normal?
It's malnutrition. These are the relatives of the patients. Come and cook for their relatives.
So there's no food at all in the hospital?
There's no food.
That must be difficult when a lot of people are here for malnutrition reasons or for dehydration, etc.
Yes. So we hope and wish to give them food. But we are not just able because of financial problems that facing the country.
What's she in here for? It seems like getting treatment is quite difficult.
Without food, medicine, or electricity, South Sudan's largest hospital is clearly failing its patients.
You have enough funding here? I mean, for you guys to get paid and everything? No?
You know how much I get a month? Less than $30.
Less than $30? Yeah. And you're the director of the hospital?
Yeah. Imagine the other doctors. They get like $10, $15.
Why?
So there's no money. The government has no money.
While South Sudan struggles to provide the most basic services, it's sitting on some of the largest oil reserves on the continent. Mading Noor is a journalist whose family members fought and died in the war for independence.
The economy is struggling because the oil prices are declining, and South Sudan is a country that is almost entirely dependent on oil. It has tremendous effect.
In this oil-producing country, it's actually almost impossible to buy gas.
There's a big fuel shortage here?
It's huge, it's immense.
I've seen all these people queuing up to try and fill up their tanks. Is that how everyone gets their fuel?
It's crazy. Let me tell you, on record, I waited for 10 hours.
10 hours?
10 hours and I didn't get it.
So where's everyone getting their fuel?
There is the black market.
So these guys are all selling gas?
Yeah. That come? 20 liters. I live to me.
A single bottle of fuel costs more than the monthly salary of most people in South Sudan. Despite at least 3.5 billion barrels in oil reserves, the economy is now completely crippled. A far cry from what was expected when the country gained its independence.
Were you here on Independence Day?
Absolutely. I was here, and this place was filled up with people.
We are all South Sudanese. We may be a Zande, a Dinka, a Nuer.
This was the only time in our history where we came together despite our differences, whether they were tribal, whether they were political, whether they were economical. All kinds of people were here.
Remember, you are the South Sudanese best.
Just like a wedding night, when the honeymoon fades, the real problems, they kick in. And it was just a matter of 3 years, and the country erupted in war. December 15, 2013, there was a brewing power struggle between Salva Kiir Mayardit, the president of South Sudan.
I promise you today that justice will prevail.
And Riek Machar, the former first vice president.
President Salva Kiir has been corrupted by power.
And of course, at the center of power is oil, it's money. It became a conflict along tribal lines. The Dinka, where the president comes from, and the Nuer, where the former first vice president comes from. And that engulfed the whole country.
With the country's two largest tribes divided by their loyalty to the president and the vice president, the world's newest country split along ethnic lines.
This is not the country we fought for. We were fighting for a future where there is peace, there is stability, there is prosperity. So indeed, people are upset about where we have found ourselves in the country.
In 2016, a team of investigators, backed by George Clooney, who's been an activist in this region for over a decade, published a 2-year-long investigation into South Sudan's leaders.
This morning, we're prepared to give evidence of massive criminal behavior by the president of South Sudan and by his opposition, the ousted vice president.
They concluded that at the root of the power struggle is a fierce battle over control of the state's assets.
They're stealing the money to fund their militias to attack and kill one another.
South Sudan's leaders and their relatives were getting rich off lucrative deals in the oil and mining industries, while the country was driven into war and famine. 14-year-old Bol is among the nearly 2 million people who were forced from their homes and now scattered across South Sudan.
And how did you get here?
Do
you think about your family a lot?
To find out how the ongoing war is affecting civilians outside of Juba, we flew north, crossing ethnic lines to the tribal home of the opposition. More than 120,000 ethnic Nuers are now living inside this one barbed wire camp. UN peacekeepers protect them from their own government. Half of them are children like Isaac, who fled ethnic slaughter by government soldiers.
Did you lose anyone?
Have
you talked to anyone about how you feel? I mean, I can tell you're upset and you're thinking about your brother. We just climbed up to the edge of the POC site, and from up here you can see how absolutely humongous this site is. In fact, it's the 3rd largest city in South Sudan, and this fence here is the only thing separating these people from the attacks and killings and atrocities that happen right out there.
Even inside the camps, food is scarce. Civilians, mostly women, are forced to leave the camp every day to collect firewood, which they can then sell to purchase food.
So it takes 4 or 5 hours to reach the place where you're going? What are the biggest threats when you go out to collect wood? Who is it that's beating and raping?
Both the UN and the African Union have documented cases of mass rape of civilians and even children by government soldiers.
When the UN mission in South Sudan just out with a Mongolian battalion, the security situation around Dandu has been pretty precarious recently, and so these peacekeepers are frequently having to head out on patrols to go and assess what's going on.
The territory around the camp has changed hands several times during the conflict. Right now, it's government soldiers that are controlling this town.
There's so many soldiers loitering around this one tiny little village, and several extremely young-looking kids with guns.
According to the UN, there are more than 17,000 child soldiers involved in the conflict, and that number is growing. With one of the world's largest peacekeeping missions protecting hundreds of thousands from their own government, we sat down with the country's Minister of Information. Michael Lueth belongs to the small circle of presidential elites. The US recently attempted to slap sanctions on him for orchestrating the slaughter of civilians.
Can you explain what the current state of South Sudan is in your eyes?
Well, the current state of South Sudan in terms of human rights is okay.
You say it's okay. I mean, there's almost 3 million people displaced throughout South Sudan, and about 200,000 of those are living within IDP camps within their own country.
Were they displaced because of human rights violations?
Yes.
No.
There are widespread reports throughout the country and outside of the country of killings, of brutal mass rapes. These are reports from independent people, from individuals, from humanitarian groups, from the UN.
These are not credible reports. These are reports which are written here in the hotels.
I mean, it sounds like you're saying that the government accepts zero responsibility for any of the atrocities that have happened throughout your country. And if you don't accept any of that responsibility, it's incredibly difficult to see how peace could ever be reached if there's no accountability at all.
I'm not saying that there had never been any offenses committed. Yes, there are offenses committed. People are under arrest. People are under arrest and they are under investigation. Others have already undergone trial.
Do you refute the fact that South Sudan is one of the most corrupt countries in the world?
Well, corruption is all over the world. South Sudan is part of the world, so it cannot be free of corruption.
I'm asking you on a scale whether South Sudan is up there as one of the most corrupt countries in the world.
South Sudan is one of the corrupt countries in the world, not the most.
Are you corrupt?
Me? No, I'm not corrupt.
While the government denies the allegations of corruption, the fact remains that the same men who tore this country apart remain very much in power, while civilians continue to pay the price. And it's the international community that's left with the costly task of trying to hold the world's youngest country together.
We're hoping that Gol, the 14-year-old kid that we met in Juba, is on this plane so that he can come and be reunified with his family. Gol, who's 14 years old, hasn't seen his family here in Bentiu since he was 11. Does it feel good to be back in your town? What are you most excited about? Who are these people outside? How long have you been waiting for this day?
Lo cho cô ấy chụp, khi nuôi nó cứ trả lo em đi để lo ngồi chụp, ngồi chụp rồi